Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another video. Today we have a very special guest coming on the show. We've got CryptoCito, who is the co-founder of the Cosmosverse. He also is the founder of the CryptoCito YouTube channel and helps to validate the Cosmos network. So welcome on board, Cito. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I always enjoy being on the other side of the mic sometimes. So really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, no, the pleasure is absolutely all mine. You know, really excited to dive into Cosmos, yourself, and the Cosmos ecosystem. So could I maybe start by asking you to tell me a bit about yourself, Cito?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how far I should go back to my birth, but no, just kidding. I got into crypto sometime in early 2017. Before that, actually, I was working in the corporate world. So I did an kind of training program at Mercedes-Benz. That's, you know, where I'm from. I'm German. So if you work there, that's the absolute jackpot if you get into that company. So I worked there for 3 years. Didn't really like this corporate life. Went on to study Chinese and economics. Actually, I was really interested also in languages and these type of things. And during the studies, I really met other people that wanted to do something different. And that's how I stumbled upon Bitcoin in 2017. And from there on, it's been a wild journey. I mean, 2017 was amazing, right? Everybody made money. Everybody was happy. I learned a lot, studied a lot, really inhaled every single white paper I could find. 2018 was the total opposite then, and the first time where I really came back on the bottom, right, and lost everything. But I stuck around because I was really fundamentally convinced that crypto is a new paradigm, basically. But there's also a lot of BS, right, in the industry. And if you remember the 2017 times, the ICO mania, right, the white paper mania, that was wild. And yeah, I mean, it's been wild. 2018, 19, sticked around, actually doubled down in the bear market, even though I lost everything, literally, from a financial perspective, at least. Did every single mistake anybody can ever do, got hacked, got scammed, you know, had coins on, like lost access to my private keys, all these type of things. So when 2020 came around, I thought, man, I made some mistakes that I could probably help other people to avoid making. And that's where the idea of CryptoCito actually came around, to say, hey, I just make videos. You know, that was the time also COVID started. Just record videos, talk a little bit about the mistakes and my views on the market. And then really gained traction only a year later, I would say, which is when I discovered Cosmos as an ecosystem, because I really enjoyed this ideology and the mentality that the Cosmos community had, still has. Basically this interoperable, open mindset, right? We're not here to kill Ethereum. We're not here to kill Bitcoin. Back then, I'm sure you remember, like, a lot of these chains try to be the Ethereum killer, right? And I think Cosmos really resonated with me for that ideological viewpoint. And from there, it's just been an insane rabbit hole I fell in. And yeah, fast forward, as you mentioned, we co-founded Cosmoverse, which is the annual Cosmos conference. That's kind of like the Polkadot decoded of Cosmos, or the DEF CON of Cosmos, if you will. So that's been a huge success. Cito also, my validating arm, that's also, now we're validating on 30 plus chains, which is amazing. And obviously with content. So yeah, it's been a wild journey. Now I think I just want to like process everything, you know, settle, improve my content quality. Also, there's so many things and screws you can always optimize. But yeah, that's my journey so far, and I'm excited for what's to come. I think right now we're obviously in a little bit of a bearish, negative, sideways phase of the market. Also a lot of regulatory attacks, but that's probably the best time where you should double down on your research, at least, not financially, but on your research, and really figure out what could be the next big ecosystem. And I'm kind of like very convinced that Cosmos has a lot of potential. So
yeah, fascinating.
There we go.
Absolutely fascinating. I've got a brother that works for a German company, Siemens. So he's over in Germany all the time, in the kind of corporate world. But yeah, it sounds like you've got quite a similar story to myself and quite a few other people, that baptism of fire in 2017, 2018 and doubled down. I always find it's the people that stick around through the hard times really get to appreciate the good ones. And that's exactly what I feel like we've went through over, certainly after the COVID crash into 2021 and then 2022, we know the story. And here we are. And you mentioned that there's a lot of bad sort of actors or not bad actors, but kind of this sort of scammy element to crypto. Bear markets are actually sometimes a blessing in the sense that they kind of wipe a lot of those people out, which is certainly interesting. You've also mentioned we're in this kind of regulatory nightmare a little bit. I actually think regulations are, or my views on regulations is that they're very much what propels this industry from a $1 trillion industry all the way into the tens. And they're very much needed for what everyone keeps talking about, which is mass adoption. So when did you first kind of come across Cosmos? How did you, somebody being in crypto, having made mistakes, how did you kind of stumble upon Cosmos?
Yeah, so I somehow, for some reason, I don't know when and why, I bought some Atom in probably 2019 after. Mainnet launch was March 2019, so it must have been sometime in 2019. So I had some Atom, didn't know why. And when I looked into my portfolio and saw like, why do I have this? What is this even? I thought like, okay, either I do the research now or I just sell it. And there was a time where CryptoCito was just starting, so I made a tweet, and a core developer of Cosmos called Jack Zampolin actually responded to my tweet, got on a call with me and walked me through what IBC is, the Internet of Blockchains, the whole idea of how Cosmos resolves interoperability and what's the ideology, right? And that really dragged me into the ecosystem. And from there on, I was really received with, very warmly from the rest of the developer community, because back then, this is pre-IBC even went live. So back then, there were a lot of builders that were super happy that somebody who is not part of the core development team came around and was just interested and made videos about it. So I had pretty much every builder in Cosmos on my channel over the years. In the beginning, I thought actually Cosmos is taking more and more of my time, but maybe I should just focus on that, right? And and everybody that's listening knows it's impossible basically just stay up to date with the crypto market as a whole, right? And you can't be an expert on 10 different ecosystems at a time. You could probably 5 years ago, but now it's just within these ecosystems, you have so many different protocols, teams, communities also. So for me, it was just like, okay, I focus on Cosmos. I double down all my efforts and time and energy into Cosmos. But always with this mentality, like, I don't want to become blind to other ecosystems, right? I always want to be open to it. So also recently I've done more and more interviews with founders of other ecosystems such as Near. I just had Ilya on my channel. I also had a head of engineering from Avalanche on my channel to just see maybe if there's some synergies with Cosmos, because I think overall, that's how I see the crypto space. It's very fragmented, but also isolated. And I think we need more alignment between core teams, all these ecosystems, right? I think if we just, as you mentioned, regulation also, I think if teams within crypto fight each other and try to kill each other, we're just losing time, right? We need more alignment. I think Cosmos has a great shot because of the whole philosophy it represents, this app chain thesis also, right, which we get into in a second, I guess. So that really resonated with me, and it's really hard, but I try to reestablish some of the alignment between also other teams. And as I said, I mean, since I discovered Cosmos, it's just been a rabbit hole I naturally and organically fell into, and it's just getting more and more. Like, to be honest, at this point, I completely lost the sight of how much is actually going on. Like, I hear of new chains in Cosmos that I've never heard before, but it's great to see the ecosystem growing organically and by itself. I think that's very sustainable and very healthy for Cosmos. And I think my role is to communicate some of the developments and educate or basically publicly learn, right? Like, that's how I see myself, like a public learner. And sometimes also educator when I make videos and tutorials. But yeah, that's basically
Yeah, no, I
journey.
think you've done a great job of educating people. Certainly myself, I've been watching your channel for ages, and definitely have seen you sort of go off in the and look at other chains, which I think is really healthy. And you talked about IBC, which I'm sure we can come to, but you actually now have other ecosystems looking to deploy IBC within their ecosystem, which kind of links it to this Cosmos verse, I guess, which is really, really interesting. Now, one thing that I'm really dying to get into is what is Cosmos? Because I think for me personally, I found it a little bit more challenging to get my head around Cosmos than something like Ethereum or Algorand, which is just, you know, a layer one and you have dApps built on top of it. And then we've got things like sidechains. Whereas I feel like Cosmos has taken a very different approach. And it isn't a layer one. I've heard people call it a layer zero, which I'm not too sure is correct. I've also, and I think this is the best way that I've heard it described, it's an ecosystem of sort of sovereign blockchains. But I'll let you answer that, as you know far more than me. I think
that's pretty much pretty accurate. So it's basically an ecosystem of sovereign L1s. So it's not just one blockchain, it's many blockchains that are all interconnected through IBC, which is this interoperability protocol, right? The inter-blockchain communication protocol, which is what IBC stands for. So that's what, at the best case, you could call layer zero, is the IBC protocol, because it's completely agnostic, right? It's not tied to one chain. It doesn't have a token. You can't invest in it. It's like core bottom layer infrastructure that enables this seamless connectivity between all these layer ones. And I see a lot of people made a mistake, like I certainly made in the beginning, to think that Atom represents Cosmos or the Cosmos hub represents Cosmos, right? And up until I think a year ago, if you look on CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap, the Atom coin was always represented or called as Cosmos alone, right? But actually that was wrong. So they changed it now. Now it's called the Cosmos Hub, which is what this sovereign L1 on which Atom resides is, right? It's just a competitive L1. It's the first one though, and it's the one that's envisioned to become also this interchain security or interchain service provider to provide other services for chains for other L1s in Cosmos. But yeah, so basically Atom, and there's many others, right? You can go on mapofzones.com, you see all the IBC enabled chains. I think in the meantime, there's over 50, nearly 60 chains in production on mainnet right now. Some of them are Kujira or Osmosis, Stargaze, right? There's like, it varies, right? From NFT platform to DEX to DeFi protocols. Injective is also Cosmos chain. Terra is a blockchain on Cosmos.
It's crazy.
L1.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you there, but I tell people that Terra, Luna, was built on Cosmos, and people are like, what are you talking about? Luna's its own kind of thing. And I'm like, no, this chain that got to $44 billion in terms of a market cap, is, and it still is, part of the Cosmos ecosystem. And I think actually when I tell people that, they kind of go, maybe I should start looking into this thing called Cosmos. And, you know, it's fascinating.
It is, yeah. And I think Terra also showed that the app chain thesis, which is what Cosmos pioneered, works, right? Because Terra collapsed literally overnight. It was by far the biggest Cosmos chain out there, much bigger than the Cosmos Hub itself, which is like this OG Cosmos chain. But it collapsed overnight, $30 billion gone like that. But it didn't affect the downtime or uptime of other chains in Cosmos, right? It certainly stress tested the whole tech stack that's underneath, right? The Cosmos SDK, IBC, Tenement, also as a consensus algorithm, right? Those are like the underlying tech stacks. But it didn't affect the uptime of these chains, right? It certainly did on the liquidity side because it's all packed and paired to each other, but it didn't affect the uptime. And I think that was a really the first proof that the upchain thesis has core benefits, right? Example, if Solana goes down, which sometimes happens, everything on Solana goes down, right? Because everything depends on Solana. That's like the counterpart, which is the Fed protocol thesis, the counterpart to the app chain thesis that also Ethereum has. Even though I think a lot of these ecosystems, I also saw Cardano is now getting into side chains. like all these ecosystems, they want to branch out basically and have shared security layers, side chains, sovereign rollups, app chains, whatever you want to call it, right? Avalanche calls it subnets, Polkadot calls it parachains. So you see all these like more customizable, independent network structures. I just think Cosmos has been a pioneer, along with Polkadot, to be honest. Polkadot has also been very early on this approach. But yeah, it proved many things. And yeah, I think people really need to understand. I think that's also probably one of the downsides, right? If people want to learn about crypto, they always want to learn about, okay, what should I buy? And the thing is, in Cosmos, like if you buy Atom, you're not exposed to Cosmos as an ecosystem, right? You're just exposed to one chain, even though the fact that most people still think that Cosmos Hub equals Cosmos, the fact that everybody thinks that makes it kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because everybody just buys Atom and people just perceive Atom as Cosmos. But I think that's going to change. The Cosmos Hub has to be more and more competitive now, which is coming now with interchain security that's being rolled out and all these kind of features. But yeah, you really need to dig deeper into other L1s in Cosmos to really think, okay, how do I position myself if I want to have exposure to the Cosmos as an ecosystem and not just one L1 within Cosmos?
So, yeah, no, it just that concept alone took me a while to get my head around, that actually this is an ecosystem of Cosmos is an ecosystem of layer one blockchains. It's not any one
exactly.
chain.
I mean, you could just also, if you take the analogy, maybe that helps also people. That helped me certainly in the beginning, is just imagine Uniswap, Balancer, Aave, right? All these Ethereum smart contracts or Ethereum applications, if they were all on their own chain, right? And they all were interoperable to each other through some sort of trust minimized interoperability standard. That's basically Cosmos, right? Like the premise is every idea, every dApp should or at least could have their own chain, if also there's a demand for it, right? If there's product market fit. But that's basically how it started. And as I said, currently there are nearly 60 chains in production, countless chains in the works. And that also, at the same time, though, I think I also want to clarify that could also mean that you have an app chain, an app-specific blockchain that's there to be the EVM chain of Cosmos, right? Which is a chain on which you could build smart contracts or like applications as smart contracts, right? For example, FMOS is an EVM Cosmos chain where you can build Solidity smart contracts on. Juno Network implements CosmWasm, where you can build applications on top of. Agoric is a JavaScript smart contract platform where you can build on top of. So you can also have different chains that also implement smart contract capabilities, which then is kind of like this Fed protocol as an app chain within this app chain philosophy, right? And I think that's very interesting. And there's definitely product market fit for many of these concepts, maybe not for all, but as everything in crypto, you know, it's all highly experimental, very early stage. So, but yeah, we got to see how things evolve here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've always said that actually, if you look at Cosmos, it's kind of like a microcosm of the crypto space at large, right? Which is the macrocosm. Cosmos is basically the exact same thing, but you've got this sort of interoperability protocol that you can implement. And I think we've got, I know you are very familiar with Composable, who have deployed as a parachain on Polkadot. You're going to have that IBC link from the sort of Cosmos ecosystem now to Polkadot. And then they've got their own interoperability kind of XCM that will, you can kind of see this spider web forming. And maybe IBC is the answer to interoperability. I mean, you've got World Mobile looking to build a sidechain on Cardano. You've got, it's very, very exciting, I think.
It is, yeah. And I had this interview also with Ilya, who is the co-founder of Near, and they were building Rainbow Bridge. They still are, it still works. But he said at some point we noticed, or at least we kind of understood that IBC might be the interoperability standard. So instead of just putting all our efforts into building something similar, we just adopt IBC, right? So Near also in collaboration with Composable, is on its track to become IBC compatible. Avalanche, they're also really interested in it, but I think it requires some more technical efforts and implementation work. But yeah, as you mentioned, right, Cardano sidechain, I don't know what's the name for it yet, but IOG themselves and World Mobile Team or Token, whatever, they're building this Cardano sidechain on the Cosmos SDK with IBC, as far as I did my research, at least, as far as I understood. Polkadot is coming. I did an interview with the founder of Eclipse. They're bringing IBC to the Solana VM.
Oh, wow.
So it's interesting, like these different concepts, right? It's all like coming together. But yeah, we have to see where adoption happens, where real liquidity comes in, and IBC seems to be on track right now to become this interoperability standard. And the fact that it doesn't have a token, it's not on a chain, it doesn't depend on any chain alone, makes it interesting because it's more independent and agnostic for other ecosystems, even outside of Cosmos, right? So yeah, it's definitely interesting and quite advanced, I would say, at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even to mention another one, Corium, I think they're doing something with XRP. Yes. I mean, it's crazy, all the stuff that's coming out. And for me, I'd always seen Cosmos or at the Atom token on Coinbase, and it just stayed stagnant. And then all of a sudden it gained a lot of traction. And I think rightfully so, because when people kind of, like we're trying to do in this interview, lift the hood up, they'll go, wow, there's a lot going on here. And that brings me perfectly on to my next question. Could I maybe ask you about the Cosmos Hub then? So we've spoken about Cosmos broadly as, what it is. Just to mention again, many people are familiar with Crypto.com and the Cronus chain, both built within the Cosmos ecosystem. There's a lot more going on with Cosmos than I think. You're obviously very familiar with it, but most people, still kind of in the dark a little bit about it. So
yeah, I mean, Cosmos Hub, if I should talk about that, the Cosmos Hub, I think, as I mentioned, has been the first chain. It brought, IBC to life. It brought the Cosmos SDK into production and the real world, right? It's like this OG chain that just bootstrapped the technology. It also bootstrapped a lot of the communities in Cosmos, right? Now you have the Juno community, you have Osmosis community, you have all these like separate communities. But many of them actually originate out of Atom, right? Because Osmosis did a quite decent airdrop when they launched, Juno as well, right? A lot of these chains did decent Atom airdrops, and a lot of the liquidity is also paired and pegged to Atom. So Atom is, some people say it's the money of Cosmos, or it's the liquidity hub of Cosmos. It's the gateway to Cosmos because it's listed on most centralized exchanges, right? Which is also a good use case. Up until now, like on a product positioning like type of things, I think there has been a lack of a clear use case. Clearly, there has been a lack of a clear use case. But now with the rollout of replicated security, which is the shared security model that the Cosmos Hub most likely implements, and I say most likely because this is currently in the governance, on-chain governance. So the Atom community votes whether they want this feature or not, but it's ready. And as it looks like, it will go live to the Cosmos Hub on March 15. And after that, we're going to see the potentially first consumer chain, which is basically the equivalent of a parachain in Polkadot, to go live on the Cosmos Hub sometime later this month, which, deadlines in crypto mean nothing. So let's just say sometime in the future. But that's the plan. That chain is called Neutron. So you will see in the future Neutron renting security from the Cosmos Hub, and they need to come up with a business model that's interesting enough for Atom validators and Atom stakers, because they basically have to pitch all of us to say, hey, we want to bring this chain to the Cosmos Hub. We want to be secured by all you validators. But here's what we give in return. This is our roadmap. This is what we want to build. And Neutron is a CosmWasm-enabled smart contract platform. So they want to bring a DEX potentially to the Cosmos Hub, or a liquid staking protocol, or many different DeFi protocols. We don't know yet because they haven't made the proposal yet. So we're going to see that once it's up there. But yeah, so you have Neutron lined up. USDC native issuance is coming to Cosmos. Originally, they were saying we immediately launch with replicated security. Now I think they wrote back a little bit, because I also think they want to see first how Neutron plays out as a consumer chain. How is the whole governance process going, right? Like that's some brand new stuff. So obviously they first want to see how things evolve here. By they, I mean Circle and the Noble team, which is the name of that chain that USDC will be issued on. And then you have like a couple others in the pipeline. So my point is, the Cosmos Hub is now on the way to become an interchain security provider, which puts it more into the category of the relay chain in Polkadot or Kusama. But from there on, I think it's really about finding more use cases that the Cosmos Hub and the Atom community can offer to other chains, right? Potentially IBC routing, right? That could be an interesting use case to say, instead of if new chains have to set up channels with each other, which requires relaying efforts and technological implementations, instead of that, you could just route IBC traffic through the Cosmos Hub. That's an interesting idea, because, but I think like at this point, there hasn't been too much research put into that. But like those type of, use cases could come to the hub in the future. But at the same time, it's also, I know like Cosmos is sometimes perceived as being a drama queen, because the community is super engaged and active and everything is on chain. So at the same time, all of this always has to go through community governance, right? Everybody always votes on these things. And that's a beautiful feature, I guess, of the Cosmos Hub and other chains in Cosmos. But at the same time, it can also hinder some of the innovation, right? Cardano, Avalanche, Near, they don't have on-chain governance, which means the community has less say in the network. But at the same time, it also means they can move much faster, which is a competitive advantage for them over Cosmos, right? So that all comes with trade-offs. But yeah, it's exciting to also be part of that decision-making process, right? Sometime last year, we actually had a proposal on the Cosmos Hub. I don't know if you've seen that, for Atom 2.0, which was basically an entire roadmap. Like, just think if IOG or Parity or the Near Foundation, Solana Foundation, they draft up a roadmap and they say, this is what we want to do, but we can't implement it without community approval. So they prepare a pitch, basically, throw it on chain, and the community actually rejected it. So that's wild. That has been quite controversial.
I didn't actually know that. I'd read the Atom 2.0 suggestions, which actually had I think one of the roles was to reduce the inflation model for Atom. That was part of it. There was a few things.
It was pretty aggressive and very bold, which is why it didn't go through. And currently we see it's being broken up into parts. So one part of it was, for example, to raise the community tax, which 2 weeks after Atom 2.0 was rejected, someone else made a proposal and it was increased, right? Like, we already see some elements of Atom 2.0 being implemented right now. But in the big picture, I think it was just too bold, the whole idea of Atom 2.0. And yeah, inflation was one thing, right? To entirely just eliminate inflation, mint new atoms for the community pool, right? There was like some very bold ideas. But yeah, that's why it didn't go through. But yeah,
I didn't even know that. Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't, because I'd read Atom 2.0 and in my head I was like, oh wow, this is kind of like an EIP, Ethereum improvement proposal or a Cardano CIP that's going to get put through, whereas actually the community obviously vetoed it, which is interesting. And I was saying to you off camera that I've always found the Cosmos community to be probably the most philosophical and kind of ideological community out there. I don't know if that's a fair comment to make or not.
I think it's a fair comment. And I think also there's a lot of mutual respect between Cosmos core builders and other builders, right? Like from the Parity team, but also from Ethereum especially. which is like really hard sometimes, you know, if things get too political or too aggressive, like there's a lot of hate between the development communities. But I think, as you said, Cosmos is quite at the roots of what crypto and blockchain is all about. It's a lot also about decentralization. Sure, it can always be better, right? The Nakamoto coefficient could always be higher. Like, we're still super early. The community is super small. The validator community is super small, but it's growing fast. So I think there's a huge upside. And I think that the spirit is still the same as it was when I joined 2 years ago, which is, you know, we're really in it for building this internet of blockchains, app chains, interoperability, right? But keep it also decentralized and incentivize also decentralization more, which is super hard, right? For any crypto project, starting with Bitcoin. So yeah, it's interesting, but I think there's still a lot of things to improve in Cosmos. It's far from perfect, but it's probably one of the most perfect ecosystems in crypto, like compared to others, in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think what you mentioned about us being so early, and this is the thing that really interested me with, and I'm a big fan of Polkadot, big fan of lots of other sort of ecosystems out there. And one thing that really attracted me to Polkadot and actually Cosmos was the fact that they're doing things differently, which, like, we've all seen layer ones come around, and actually I think how layer ones compete with Cosmos or something like Polkadot is through side chains and app chain. You know, they've got their own way of doing these things, sort of. But we're not even regulated yet. You know, this industry has a long way to go, and the right way of doing blockchain, which is what Polkadot and Cosmos, I feel, have challenged from this kind of architectural Ethereum layer one, is still up for grabs. So maybe it is the right way to do blockchain is through app chains and Cosmos, or maybe it's Polkadot. It's going to be amazing. I mean, this journey is only just started, not just for ourselves, but all the listeners, and it's super exciting.
Yeah, and I think specifically if you compare Polkadot to Cosmos, I think there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of similar end games that both ecosystems want to achieve. Just they both started on the entirely other end of the spectrum, right? Polkadot started by launching this killer feature, which is shared security. They have a lot of traction now, obviously, right, with parachains and all these kind of things. While Cosmos, on the other hand, they started with building this app chain world first and IBC, right? So Cosmos has IBC in production for 2 years. Polkadot has shared security in production for 2 years, right? And as far as I know, I think parachains are like they like routed hundreds of millions, if not billions, in value over the past 2 years, right? So Cosmos has currently zero value of shared security being routed, but it's coming, right? It's coming quite soon, actually. Like I said, March 15 is when the feature gets implemented and the Cosmos Hub gets upgraded if the proposal goes through, proposal 187. But yeah, I think, as I said, right, like a lot of these communities, and that's why it goes back to my initial statement in the beginning, we lack a little bit of this alignment in crypto, because I think at the end of the day, like all these ecosystems, all these founders, all these foundations, they actually want to achieve the same end goal. Just how they started and how they get there is totally different. But we're all kind of still in the same boat. So when I see people argue or declaring a winner or declaring this, declaring that, it's like, this is way too early to decide anything here, right? It's highly experimental. Everybody thought Terra and UST is going to be the new standard and paradigm in crypto, and it vanished overnight, right? Like everything has risk involved. Everything at the best case is trust minimized, never trust less. So yeah, there's still a lot of things to go, but I think especially between Polkadot and Cosmos, there's a lot of similarities, just differences in the execution and where they stand right now.
Yeah, it's super interesting. If you look at, you know, I think blockchain is maybe an easier technological revolution to understand because we have something like the internet, you know, the internet of information. We're now on the internet of value. And actually, if you look at the sort of products that were released on the internet, you've got this great graph. I'm sure you've seen it where it starts with like AOL and Yahoo. And then over time, your Googles move up and stuff like that. And I think that's exactly how this space is going to go. There's going to be many winners. I don't necessarily think the first will be the last, but we'll see. You know, it's super exciting to be on this journey. You mentioned IBC. So IBC right now, you don't currently need the Cosmos hub for IBC to work. Just so I've got that correct.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. What I mentioned earlier was, so right now, the way it works is if there's a new Cosmos chain that wants to implement IBC, they have to go and implement that either from the get-go, or I think they have to go through their own on-chain governance. And then they have to establish these channels to other chains, right? So if you want to send an IBC transfer from, let's call it Cito chain, right? A new Cito chain or all-in chain. Let's call it all-in chain.
What?
So that all-in
stay
chain,
tuned. Stay tuned for those two chains.
So if all-in chain and Cito chain want to communicate to each other, they have to set up a channel, right? And that channel requires relayers to transfer the IBC packets, and that involves cost, right? Somebody has to run the infrastructure for it. I think it costs a few $1,000s actually a month to like just run a relayer. And currently there's no incentive models for relayers. So instead of always having to open up a new channel, you could just route, create one channel from your all-in chain to the Cosmos hub, and the Cosmos hub is pegged to every other chain through IBC to enable this compatibility, right? So with just one channel, you get access to all Cosmos basically. If the Cosmos hub fosters its stand and like its positioning as this actual hub in Cosmos where a lot of chains connect to. Right now, we actually see Osmosis actually has more peers, like more connections via IBC to other chains than the Cosmos hub. So Cosmos hub right now is actually number 2. And Osmosis obviously is a DEX for those of you that have used it. So it makes sense to have a lot of IBC transfers directly to Osmosis. But for some chains, it's probably not required, or maybe there's another competitive DEX coming up. So it makes sense to think about maybe establishing the hub as an IBC terminal and have some sort of economic incentive for it as well that would accrue value for Atom as a coin, right? That has always been a criticism as well, is to say that Atom doesn't have value accrual, bam, bam, bam. But there's a lot of things in the works. Starting with shared security and potentially stuff like IBC routing, and from there on, it's like there's so many ideas, like the allocator or the scheduler. I don't know if you've seen that in the white paper, how to also capture MEV, right? Like there's so many things, so it's really endless from there.
Yeah, again, we're just scratching the surface on it all, and it seems like that's something the Cosmos Hub should do. I mean, that seems like a proposal that I'd vote for. I don't know about yourself. Do you see a high probability of that coming off, or do you not want to say?
I mean, I think there still needs to go a lot of research into it, also around the economics of it. But it would certainly, if it makes sense, like it would certainly be interesting and like definitely strengthen the role of Atom in Cosmos as an ecosystem. So I would definitely love to see that. But I think there's also some reasons against it. Like there has been discussions like around a year ago, and these discussions dried out a little bit. But all eyes are now on shared security, which I think is a killer feature to start with. And from there might be more. So let's see.
Watch this space. Yeah. The next question I've got for you, Cito, is what's exciting you the most right now? Maybe it's something we've already spoke about. And if it is, you could just sort of bring it up shortly. But what's something what are you excited about right now within Cosmos? What's really sort of got your attention?
I mean, if you talk about new chains that are coming up, I'm really excited to see IBC going outside of Cosmos, right? So you mentioned Composable, this Cardano side chain, Eclipse, right? Connecting it with the Solana VM, Pereum with the XRP ledger. That's actually built by the Sologenic team, which is probably one of, I think, like the biggest DEX or DeFi application in XRP world. So like everything that connects IBC outside of Cosmos, I'm really, really excited about. Liquid staking is gaining a lot of traction now. And luckily we have a lot of varieties of liquid staking. So Stride is up there. They launched with a bang. I think they currently have $17 million of liquid staked assets. P-Stake as well. They just crossed 250,000 staked atoms that are now liquid thanks to their solution. Quicksilver is coming up. Lido is coming to Cosmos. So you see a variety of liquid staking providers competing for liquidity, basically. I think that's exciting. I really want to see another competitive DEX in the Cosmos skies. Osmosis is just dominating everything right now, but also that creates a lot of dependencies when it comes to liquidity, right? If the Osmosis chain would go down right now, it wouldn't affect the uptime of other chains, but it would affect liquidity, right? And prices. So that would be really, really bad. Crescent is an interesting one that I recommend people to check out, Crescent Network. And you can find all these projects on mapofzones.com, where it's all visualized, and you can also analyze some statistics there. So Crescent has a really good user experience, and also some good farming opportunities, also with liquid staked assets, which is really cool. FMOS, I'm really excited, and the whole like EVM on Cosmos. You mentioned Kronos earlier, right? That's an Ethermint chain. Ethermint is this EVM framework that runs on Cosmos chains. So Kronos, FMOS, Canto as well, right? They're all Ethermint chains, basically. And there's just so much innovation from new chains, right, that are still in the works. Saga, for example, is a chain that's coming this year. Archway is another one that I'm excited for, that will also launch with a nice airdrop, by the way. So Celestia is a big one, obviously. Most highly anticipated probably this year, like not just in Cosmos, but all crypto.
What are they trying to do in specific? What are Celestia trying to do? Why is there so much hype around?
They're like this modularity era for crypto. They say that everything should be compatible to each other, and you can run different VMs and separate the execution layer from the smart contract layer, from the settlement layer, sorry. So a lot of stuff will be deployed on Celestia. The project I mentioned earlier, actually, Eclipse, they're also deploying on Celestia. So that's how they achieve this modularity. And I think modularity as a theme is going to be quite big this year. So yeah, the list goes on. I mean, there's such a long list of existing chains, but also upcoming chains.
I'll tell you one chain that caught my attention within the Cosmos sort of universe was Agoric. Now I have no affiliations with Agoric or anything like that. One of the features that I really liked about Agoric was, and you mentioned it earlier, the Java smart contracts. So JavaScript, I think, is Python's more popular, but JavaScript's up there in terms of developers. You kind of have this barrier still, and I've actually tried to employ devs, and they are like gold dust in the crypto space. They're very, very expensive. But you have this huge pool of developers that are kind of walled off from the crypto space. Whereas if you could come up with a layer one that allows those developers to build on top of it, like what Agoric are maybe doing with JavaScript, they'll be native to that language. I think that could be huge. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I looked into some numbers a couple of days ago, the Electric Capital Developer Report or whatever it's called. We have 27 million software developers around the world. We have 23,000 monthly active general crypto developers, like in our crypto space, which is literally nothing.
Wow.
And out of these 27 million, apparently 10 million are JavaScript developers. So JavaScript seems to be one of the most adopted. I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer, so I can't really say anything more than what I read or hear from people. But the Agoric team specifically, like they have extensive experience, right? I think Dean Treble has been like active in the JavaScript space since like 20-30 years. Like he was one of the earliest contributors to JavaScript and one of the absolute OGs. And I think the Agoric team, they're quite well structured, well positioned. There needs to be more product market fit, obviously, and but if you just look at the numbers, like 23,000 monthly active developers, that's nothing, right? And there's 10 million JavaScript developers. Like, we need to find a way how we onboard these developers, right? Like, building the technological framework is one thing, onboarding developers and building applications is another one. In Agoric's case, they actually launched a cool application which has strong product market fit, in my opinion, which is IST, the interstable token. That's an interesting decentralized stablecoin, which I don't know, like, a lot of people still have 2022 PTSD, so probably they will stay away from that. Fair enough. But I think it's interesting to see these like different concepts and experiments, right? And Agoric is there. Axelar is also a Cosmos chain that's bringing also more liquidity from other ecosystems and vice versa. Injective, Fetch AI, right? Like, I'm just opening the list here. Stargaze, I mentioned earlier, is an NFT marketplace in Cosmos. Umi is a lending protocol. Mars just launched on Osmosis, the first outpost. So they launched their own chain, but then they launched an outpost on Osmosis. So yeah, you just see a lot of traction around DeFi especially, but I think on all aspects, right? If you look at NFTs as well, like, there's more and more stuff coming. I think at one point we just need to reach this escape velocity, and then it will be so much organic hype, you know, that people just want to like look into, oh, Cosmos, there's actually a lot of liquidity, a lot of engagement, a lot of active users, right? That's what VCs really are interested in. That's where big development firms are interested in. So yeah, I see the potential for sure, but it's still a journey. Secret Network, by the way, is also a Cosmos chain that's doing privacy. There's also more chains like Penumbra, Anoma, Nim that are also doing privacy. Akash, they're building this cloud infrastructure. Like, there's so many layers that we have existing solutions for. But yeah, still early days. We still need to on-ramp a lot more users. And yeah, I hope this video could help for maybe some people to check out some of the other chains and get started with Cosmos.
For sure. And I think one of the most interesting things about all this is you've mentioned so many different chains there that are all doing their different thing. They're all going to exist and be able to talk to one another. So I think a microcosm of the macrocosm crypto space as it is right now is a really good way to look at it. You know, you've got all these different blockchains that are doing different weird and wonderful things. Some things we probably can't even imagine that are going to be built on top of Cosmos right now. You know, it's absolutely fascinating. And, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Cito. And I really would love it if you could come back, if there's any individual chains that you're super excited about, or any kind of new proposals that you want to sort of shed some light on. I'd personally love to have you back on the show. I know you're a very, very busy guy. You've just recently moved to Dubai. So which I think is public, right?
No, it is. Yeah, I tweet about it all the time. People think I got paid to tweet, but like, it's really nice. Like, I like it. You know, I just share my journey here, and people should always. There's also like my philosophy is like, people should always experience things before they judge it, right? Whether that's Dubai or Cosmos or a cryptocurrency or food or whatever it is. I think like talking of personal experience is better than just talking based on an article you read or whatever. But anyways, yeah, it's been amazing to be on. I think one thing maybe for people that are now worried or like concerned, like how do I even get started here? I recommend, and there's now more and more options. I'm personally using Kepler Wallet, which is the gateway, a very nice user experience, very smooth. That's the gateway to Cosmos. You can stake through Kepler. You can see all the governance proposals in Kepler from all these chains. You can have your kind of portfolio overview of all your assets, including like LP positions that you might have. So Kepler is really cool. There's more wallets. I still have to do my homework because it's just evolving so fast and I lose track at some point. But yeah, it's been really cool to talk to you. And yeah, thanks for inviting me, man. This was really awesome.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And if you are going to use Kepler and you are looking for somebody to stake to, Cito does have his own stake pool, which is Cito. I think that's right. Yeah. Yep. So check that out. You know, as you can see from this interview, very genuine guy. you know, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really looked forward to it. And again, thank you again, Cito, for coming on and educating myself and my audience about Cosmos. And look out for any announcements from the Cosmoverse. Just go and give Cito a follow. Check out his YouTube channel. Check out his Twitter. And thank you very much, Cito. Have a blessed day.
Cheers. Cheers, man. Thanks.